the first one is for the newbies, so for people who are new at the summit, or people who are like basically visitors to the summit, or people, local people, or other people who come because they are basically interested, but they haven't really been working within the Commons yet. And that's what we called the Commons 101 earlier, or I think another name we had at some point was like the classics. We're going to present like the basics, the classics, like the Larry Lessig talk about like free culture and such things. So this is like the newbies, classics. Will go on probably during the entire summit, or at least like the first 2 days, and should be something like a range of activities which are typically more like one-to-many activities. Could be primarily keynotes, also film screenings, but also workshops, like maybe panels. But tendency is more one-to-many communication than in the rest of the thing. Then we have the second silo, which is basically taking parallel to that, and that is what we in the end came up, like we didn't really come up with a fairly good name. Oh, and one of the things is this requires translation. Everything which takes part here will be translated to Japanese, or if it's in Japanese, will be translated to English. So this is an absolute requirement. There's always translation here. Like the second thing is what we call like then as opposed to the newbies, it's for the commoners. And some people I think called it the mix at some point. So this is actually where the program, where people like through an open call suggest activities which are basically to fill in slots within the program. There should be maybe 2 or 3 tracks running at the same time for 2 days. That gives you about 24, 25 program slots. There should be an open call for that. We should come up with a taxonomy, and I think, I don't know where that bigger, is Andrew in the room? No, huh? No. Andrew had drawn up like a bigger thing, which is a bit of a pity that it is not here, which is basically like the activities should have themes and kinds. So what was? Yeah, kind of activities.
It was activity and theme.
Themes, and like we had themes like something, we need to come up with them basically, but it was like something like as...
I think I can remember them.
Okay.
I think the ones that we had was...
education,
music,
culture,
business, science, as in the science commons, and there was a fifth one. Activism, yes. So those were the themes, and then the activities would be anything from panel discussions, workshops, keynotes, speed gigging, spectrograms, demonstrations, posters, any kind of an activity that you can think of. And when people suggest a session for that, they have to suggest a theme. So, and it has to be, I think we need to limit those. So we've suggested those 5, but I mean, that we can discuss. But I do think they need to be limited just to kind of create some sort of structure. And then the activities, we can list all those activities, types of suggestions to people. And when they propose, they have to tag it under a theme and as an activity. And ideally also propose the length of time that it will take. Because at the previous one, we had everything starting at the same time, and there was an hour and a half or 2 hours, and if you finished in 30 minutes, then kind of people would hang around. But I think especially if we're going to create a big space where people can hang around, it could work to have kind of 2 30-minute things in that slot or whatever.
And like again, so if this is what was classics here, is this is basically what we want to have here is basically the new exciting stuff. Stuff which has happened since Dubrovnik, stuff which hasn't been talked about at iSummit. It's like the new stuff. So if you suggest something, if you suggest like the same stuff you did at the last summit, like the example we all had was Jamie Boyle's environmentalism panel, even though it was brilliant at the last summit, it's like, it's not a plus to do exactly the same. Like the idea is to have like the new stuff and really have an open call, go out to the community, solicit input, like maybe also come up, approach people and say, wouldn't it be great if this stuff is here? There needs to be a deadline at some point where like all these proposals will be judged and then these slots will be filled based on the information provided according to the format you've just given. And like things like translation are possible, like if somebody thinks we should have translation, or if suddenly like huge group of people who don't speak the language the presentation is in turn up. We try to come up with translation. It could be something which might even be like not in English or Japanese. It could be like if there's a bunch of Spanish-speaking people who have a very specific thing, it could even be in Spanish. Things like that. So this is basically kind of like the mix and trying to make it as new and vibrant as possible. And we said like most of the people agreed we really also want to make a focus there on trying to have as many people who are like not from North America, who are not white, male, old, like not the typical speakers we had at the previous things. And then the third thing like is like the third silo is, how do we call that? We basically call that focus groups or something. It's been addressed as tracks earlier or something. It's basically this, and we've been told yesterday at the beginning, like there's these 12 or 10 small rooms, basically meeting rooms. Basically this is not much more than these rooms are available. And you can come up with a very elaborate program for a group of 15 people who want to talk about one thing for 2 days. You get a room, you organize your own program. It could be something people say like after one of these things we want to go on, you can like claim a room. But basically the thing is, these is like programmed and it's open, everybody can go in there. And these are kind of like groups which are by definition closed. Like once you start with all of you, it's not like that after half an hour somebody can wander in and say like, I just wanted to check out what you guys are doing. So this is really where focused work can take place. There could be something planned. Somebody started planning that already, like maybe the education track, which we talked about. But that could also something like the spontaneous thing, which just comes up during the thing.
And these also had to have a specific outcome, goals that they set for the end of the conference. So that's the whole idea of focus groups, that they it comes to a conclusion at the end.
To explain that a bit more?
So the idea is that the sort of the middle section there is going to be the biggest, and that's where the sort of general call for papers or panels or whatever is going to be put out. The focus group section is more for maybe it'll only be 1 or 2 or 3 groups of 10 to 15 people who have decided that they want to separate themselves from the rest of the conference and actually focus on a specific topic for 1 or 2 days. And they will have specific goals in mind for the end of the conference. So it's really a productive session that they're actually trying to meet some goals at the end, rather than being part of maybe the more central sessions that are more generalized.
So is their booking of the space dependent on a coherent proposal with a defined goal?
My impression is that they have to have it all sort of laid out from the beginning.
Okay.
But it could be something spontaneous. Like, I mean, we wouldn't say like if there's still a room free or something, we would say like it's something and somebody says like, this was really interesting, we have to carry that on for 2 hours, we don't know where this leads us. Like it's not like nada, you first have to define your goals. But you would hope for more structured, for more like it could be something like let's discuss like even Creative Commons topics, like say the moral rights issue, let's have like a couple of countries from a certain region together and let's stick our heads together for 2.5 hours and then we're finished. So I think that's, yeah.
And I just quickly want to add how we dealt with the research issue, because there's been a lot of discussion on the list about people saying that they want a specific kind of research track or something that does where you kind of propose papers and there's a peer review system. And
since the legal date, it's also similar.
yeah,
No, CC Legal Day is the day before, I think. That's pretty much decided. So CC Legal Day is not part of this.
Yeah. So how we propose to deal with the research thing is that if that research, delivering research paper is an activity type and not a theme type, and those need to kind of be linked to a theme. You just can't do research for the sake of research. So to list research is one of the activity types, and they can go through the same process of having a peer review and everything, but that would be one of the types of activities under the theme suggested in the middle block. And if researchers then wanted to get together with only other researchers and discuss the topics available in a specifically academic way, they could then decide to do one of these focus groups on the other side and say we're a group of academic researchers, we do kind of the anthropology stuff that was mentioned yesterday, or we do specific stuff about e-learning or whatever the case may be. We want to discuss this for a day or 2 and they can propose one of those focus group tracks.
Yeah.
Can I make an intervention there, or are we just hearing and we're commenting later?
Basically, we're almost finished. Like maybe let me just recap the whole thing. So basically, the thing is, this is one too many. This is the classic, the big themes. It's always translated. It's kind of like curated. Somebody needs to be in charge of this. and basically come up with a convincing narrative for this thing, or like come up with programming, but that's classical programming. This is like the which we hope from our perspective the most exciting, the open thing. People suggest stuff, and I think like there's gonna be like at some point it's up to us here or a subgroup of us or some other smaller group program committee to like actually judge stuff, like puzzle it together, say what's gotten accepted, what didn't get accepted, this kind of. But in the beginning, this is an open call. Everything is possible in here. You can propose the most crazy stuff, and we really hope like people come up with the interesting stuff, which maybe broadens the whole thing a little bit, or like very detailed stuff. And this is basically providing room to people who already know what they want. So this is like the most experimental, the most exciting, which probably...
The EndNote track.
What?
You haven't mentioned the...
Oh yeah, like basically at that there's like in... You mean the keynote stuff?
And the EndNote track, which is the summation of the...
Yeah, like there's probably like, and the thing, this is probably like saying like if you think in terms of programming for the first 2 days, and then the third day, which is only a half day, is like trying to bring all the 3 things together and have kind of like some reflection on what's been going on, like maybe some reports from the focus groups who want to report, and you have a beginning, like there should be some opening thing which is also brings everybody together. So it's not like that there's these 2 points where like everybody meets and these activities meet, and then in the middle it's just like fairly different silos. Of course, people are free to move from one to the other, but we wouldn't expect that to happen too much. You wanted to? No.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I guess I just wanted to comment a little bit on the third idea, because the education track kept getting cited as an example of that. And I think that what you've described as the third idea is the absolute antithetical opposite of what the people who organized that last year and are talking about it this year want. So the idea being segregated, so there may be other people who will demand that kind of space, and so I think you should assess that demand. But you know, that group of people really wanted to be more integrated. Yeah. The fact that it was physically isolated made it feel like they were very separate, but that wasn't something that the group desired. So I think I would be very, very careful before you design that third structure into the event to see whether you're actually meeting a need or creating something artificial.
But I think we would no, but none of us would have said like,
guys, I don't really want to get into a discussion now.
Can
we park that as a risk? Okay, we're going to get after the CCJP presentation, we'll get up to risks.